We'll be buzzing about comics, Jerry Anderson, Frederick Pohl, and ride films next on Sci Fi Buzz. If you can't stick with his books, Frederick Pohl has some advice. Harlan Ellison's commentary. Jerry Anderson enjoys a renaissance and a gathering of the faithful at a Quantum Leap convention.
Nobody's looking at me like, you're weird, you're walking around with a hand link talking to yourself. Here, it's like, oh, hey, cool.
Hello, Buzzers. Welcome to Sci Fi Buzz. Mike Jarek here with your weekly dose of science fiction, fantasy, and horror happenings. I got to start with this. This is Moon Knight number 55. What a hot comic. It's only been out 6 months. It's already worth $30. Now, a lot of people say it's worth that because artist Steve Platt, well, his work kind of reminds them of Todd McFarlane's work, the artist and creator of Spawn. I kind of have to agree with them. Another reason the comic is going up in value is because, well, Steve Platt left Marvel, went over to Image Comics, and then Marvel dropped the Moon Knight series. So if you have one of these comics, make sure you keep it. Let's see what else is going on here. Let's check out some of the news. Ooh, look at this. Legendary author Jack Williamson's birthday will be celebrated April 14th at Eastern New Mexico State University. That's in Portales, New Mexico. Well, he's 86 years old, and he still teaches at the university. Way to go, Jack. Jack will have an asteroid named after him at the event. That'd be cool. I guess it's a fitting tribute for a man who has inspired more than 3 generations of writers to look to the stars, huh? Now, in about 4 minutes, I'm going to have our Buzz Best Bets for you, but first, we're going to a con of leapers. Ask any leaper or fan of Quantum Leap why they love the show, and they might tell you it's because Sam Beckett leaps into some pretty wild bodies, or because the show's special effects are terrific, or both. But to truly understand the phenomenon, one must delve deep inside the leaper's mind. We took the dive at the show's recent Southern California convention.
Well, it's always funny when he leaps into a woman and has to deal with the heels, because I personally hate heels myself, and I know what he's going through.
I'm a beauty queen.
Hey, did I ever tell you about the time I had a fling with a beauty queen?
No, and I don't want to know.
Sam Beckett and his holographic pal, Al, find themselves in situations beyond the viewer's wildest imagination. That's a big part of the appeal, according to show creator Don Belisario.
They love to see Scott as a fish out of water. They love to see him leaping into someone with skills that he needs that he doesn't have. And how's he going to unravel it? How's he going to solve it? How's he going to do it? I mean, here he is. He's a pilot. He can't fly. What's he going to do?
I can't fly.
Entertaining viewers is a key to any show's success, but Quantum Leap's most stirring episodes are often those that confront serious social issues, like racism.
You're a black man in the South in 1955. Trust me, that is dangerous.
Personally, one of my favorites was that dealt with the Watts riots in Los Angeles. My daughter did not know what racism was. We had never been affected by it, but I wanted her to understand what this was about. And this episode came up. I sat her down. We talked about it afterwards. And it's also a great social tool for, I think, for families.
Co-executive producer and head writer Deborah Pratt, who also moonlights as the voice of Al's handling, Ziggy, believes the show hits viewers where it counts.
I think that the way the show is structured is to tell heart stories, to tell human stories. And the fact that it's laid into a science fiction format makes this possible more than anything. I think it just brings in a breed of people that you don't get in normal television.
There's a lot of people here that are like me, and it's like nobody's looking at me like, you're weird, you're walking around with a hand link talking to yourself. Here, it's like, oh, hey, cool.
Most fans came for the big payoff.
Dean?
To meet the stars of the show.
And I get a very warm feeling from him, and I feel it's a very honest, unassuming, and genuine feeling of appreciation and interest, and I think it's great. I love it. I love the fans of the show.
The feeling is more than mutual. Fortunately for fans, Dean Stockwell and Scott Bakula were ready to pucker up and oblige each and every one of them.
Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Okay, I know that all of us here are a really big fan of your singing, so I have a favor to ask of you. This is my friend here, and her name is Dana, and she's sitting here in the wheelchair, and I was wondering if I could just, like, wheel her up and you would sing her happy birthday, because today's her 22nd birthday.
Thank you so much. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dana. Happy birthday to you.
You can leap with Sam Beckett and his holographic pal Al weekdays, both on the Sci Fi Channel and on the USA Network.
Sam, what are you gonna do with that pie, Sam? You wouldn't. Say goodnight, Gracie.
Theo Williams calling from Everett, Washington. And my recommendation is a book called The Dream Machines, an illustrated history of the spaceship in art, science, and literature. It's by astronomical artist Ron Miller, and it's formidable looking, and one of the best histories of its kind that I've ever seen.
On this week's Buzz Best Bets.
Look, up in the sky!
It's a bird!
It's a plane!
It's Superman!
That's right, the Man of Steel simply refuses to die. Ever since DC Comics' record-selling Death of Superman issue came out in fall of '92, he's more popular than ever. Time Warner Audio Books has released Superman Lives, a 2.5-hour audio drama based on the current comic adventures of America's most beloved superhero.
Superman, how good to see you.
Good to see me? By putting me flat on my keister?
Yes.
Combining the style of classic radio plays with state-of-the-art technology, Superman Lives hopes to introduce a new generation of listeners to the intimate audio experience. For those who still prefer to read about our favorite Kryptonian, The Death and Life of Superman has been riding high on bestseller lists. The book tells the complete story up to the death of Superman and beyond. And who better to tell the tale than Roger Stern, one of the primary writers of the Superman comics. And for those who crave a quick fix of Clark Kent and his super alter ego, he's never further than the nearest comic book shop. Those are this week's Buzz Best Bets. A Jerry Anderson close-up and Harlan Ellison gets in your face. Next.
Sci Fi Buzz is brought to you by the creators of Neon, proud sponsors of our 1994 U.S. Olympic team.
The thinking behind Neon's cab-forward body design is really quite simple. Move some things around, pull the wheels farther apart, push the windshield forward, and voila. Now machinery gets less room and people get more room. Hey, this calls for a little traveling music. Say hello to Neon. $89.75 for starters, $12.5, nicely loaded.
The designers of Sega's new World Series Baseball set up cameras to capture what it really feels like in a Major League box. Then made it so you can pick any Major League team in any ballpark and made it have all the players, even the guys riding the pine. So with Sega's new World Series Baseball, everything happens, well, more like it does in real life.
Oh! Sega!
You are watching Sci Fi Buzz on the Sci Fi Channel.
Do you often wonder what on earth is happening out there? The answers are in the new Sci Fi Channel magazine. In each issue, access the universe of science fiction, from what's on the Sci Fi Channel to factoids on your favorite sci-fi series, films and books, plus the latest on computer games, online services, and today's technology. Call 1-800-SCI-FI-94. Have your Visa or MasterCard ready to get the new Sci Fi Channel magazine for only $14.95. Welcome to the Edge.
One by one, the collection is displayed, and it's got Stephen King written all over it.
I think I want to die in the spring, when the whole world is celebrating the fact that life keeps going on.
Presenting rare and special programs.
That's what Golden Years taps into. Be careful what you wish for, because you might get it.
I've been experimenting with the healing process in living tissue.
Stephen King's Golden Years, part of the Sci Fi series collection. Tomorrow at 9, 6 Pacific.
You know, getting old. It's not so bad. As Chevalier said, old age doesn't seem so bad when you consider the alternative. But the older I get, the more I think about the arrogance of youth. I've discussed that with you before. Many of you are young, and many of you are almost as arrogant as I. That's how it always gets me crazy when you get upset about how arrogant I am, and then I look at you, and you're even more arrogant than I am, and you're dumber than I am, and you're more arrogant about that. Well, the reason that I mention it is there's a group of young men and one not so old man, a not so young man, who have formed a comic company called Image Comics. Now, the people in this group, there's 6 of them, I believe. Actually, there's 7, Ellison. And each one is the boss. There's Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson and Mark Silvestri and a few others. And Jim Valentino is the old guy of the bunch. I think he's, gee, I don't know, maybe he's in his 40s. The others, I think, have all just reached puberty. And they're making millions and millions of dollars. I think that it's very fine that they're doing this, because in the history of comic books, the major companies always ripped off the artists, always kept them poor, killed them with deadlines. They didn't own their own properties. All they were beanfield hands. So here are these guys who've taken the bull by the horns, to coin a brand new phrase, and they're making themselves a terrific big living. The only problem with it is they really don't know squat. They're dumb. In all the gin joints in all the world, a sour apple like you had to walk in, Ellison. What are you ashamed of yourself? Just because you never got to be a rock star like Rob Liefeld? I saw Rob Liefeld in the lobby at the San Diego Comic Con. Didn't you see him? He had a lot of pretty young girls following him. He had a brush cut. He was wearing those jeans that he did the ad. He made millions on the jeans. He's working for Spielberg now. What's the matter with you? Sour grapes? But they're so arrogant because they're making so much money, they don't care. They go ahead and they act in the way that children act without being responsible. For instance, there's a guy named, was it Todd McFarlane who did it, or Jim Lee? I think it was Todd McFarlane. He had all the pages of one of the comics that he does. This is a comic called Spawn, quite a good comic in terms of visuals. And he laid them all out, and he invited some people into his studio, and he said, look, and he shuffled them. He said, look, you can shuffle them any way you want, and they still make sense. Yeah, they still make sense if they didn't make sense to begin with. Come on, Ellison, be real. William Burroughs did the same thing. Took a novel, threw it up in the air, reformed it. It's art. Art, Ellison. And that's the problem. These guys are pretty good artists, but they're awful storytellers. And they're too arrogant to know that. They just don't know any better. They're just young, and they don't care. Money can only take you so far. Well, I don't know. They're making so much money. What are you, sour grapes, Ellison? You don't like how much money they're making? You want them to stay beanfield hands? And when the vogue passes, then you got to have something to back it up. And if you're dumb as ditch water to begin with, you wind up dumb at the end, too, but broke.
Sci-Fi Buzz producer Susan Hyman says that Jerry Anderson is enjoying a renaissance all across America. I bet this guy is loving this.
Wouldn't you? A whole new generation of viewers are tuning into his Super Marionation series. He's got a new syndicated show going on in the fall.
As cool as Sci-Fi Buzz? I bet it's not that cool.
Nothing's that cool.
Thank you, Susan.
But we talked to him a couple days ago, and all he wanted to do was talk about an underappreciated show that he produced 20 years ago.
Like Sci-Fi Buzz, underappreciated.
Yeah, like Sci Fi Buzz.
Okay, so maybe you've seen more impressive effects in lots of big-budget sci-fi features. But given the fact that UFO made its debut on British television nearly a decade before Star Wars hit theaters, the effects aren't half bad.
Well, I think it's pretty fair to say that we kicked the whole thing off and started the ball rolling.
Jerry Anderson, along with Sylvia Anderson, his ex-wife and partner, set visual effects standards in Super Marionation series like Thunderbirds and Stingray. For the first time, characters weren't simply flimsy dolls dangling awkwardly from strings. When their production segued into live-action TV, they accepted the challenge wholeheartedly. Once again, new visual precedents were set on both sides of the Atlantic.
The special effects, of course, started in the early days when we were making puppet shows for children. And we started to use miniatures combined with high-speed photography and lots of explosions. And the process became refined over the years. Now, when we came on to UFO, clearly the special effects had to be of a very high quality because they were now playing alongside human beings.
We'll be in the area in 8 minutes. Keep me informed of the UFO's progress.
UFO was set in the 1980s, which means that a show that was supposed to take place in the future is now actually set in the past. Now, trivial matters aside, the show not only looked mighty fine for its time, but some believe it had a more talented cast and a stronger storyline than its successor, Space 1999.
At that particular time, there was a great deal of interest about UFOs, and unfortunately, I made the series, and almost the day that it went out, the American Army Air Force concluded a big investigation into UFOs, and they said there are no such things, which was a hell of a start for the show.
Anderson admits the idea of having aliens play the bad guys was sparked by his childhood memories of World War II, when any stranger was the enemy. But it's also been rumored that UFO's Shadow Organization, which stands for Supreme Headquarters Alien Defense Organization, was based on real anti-Cold War organizations like the CIA. Anderson offers a firm negative to that notion.
I've always made it a very, very strict rule, bearing in mind that I knew my shows were being shown throughout the world to young children, and every 3 years they had a new audience. I didn't want to poison any young minds, and so no, we kept away from politics, we kept away from East-West conflict, and that's why we set up our aliens, I guess, as the enemy, because I didn't particularly want to be a contributor to World War III.
Though Anderson relished the chance to finally work with real live actors, UFO's Ed Bishop was a personal favorite, he often found himself longing for simpler times.
I found when I was shooting with actors for the first time, I thought how wonderful, you know, you're able to say action, they walk through a doorway, come across the room, pick up a telephone, speak in sync, their eyes are all facing the right way, so that was terrific. But then they started to say to me things like, tell me, Jerry, why am I picking up a red telephone? You know, what is my motivation? Why is the telephone? And then I suddenly realized that I was really swapping one set of problems for another, so.
Since UFO's premature demise after only one season, Anderson continued to stretch visual limits on shows like Space 1999 and Terrahawks. In his latest endeavor, Space Police, he's again steering his creative spaceship deep into the sci-fi fold.
The whole idea here is to take the New York police and transplant them out into space and replay all the wonderful stories that have been staged in New York in the past.
To ensure the show carries that unique Anderson touch, it's been loaded up with state-of-the-art effects called Galactronics. Space Police begins a syndication run in the U.S. this fall. But for those who need their Jerry Anderson fill right now, UFO flashes across screens every Sunday afternoon right here on the Sci Fi Channel.
One of hard sci-fi's top authors, Frederick Pohl, next.
In designing the new Neon, we took some advice from Mom. When you go outside to play, put on a heavy coat. Well, Neon wears 6 coats. One is up to 5 times as heavy as a normal coat. And its top coat is so durable, it should look like new for years. 6 coats. Oh yeah, and a muffler. Say hello to Neon. $89.75 for starters, $12.5, nicely loaded.
The designers of Sega's new World Series Baseball set up cameras to capture what it really feels like in a Major League box, then made it so you can pick any Major League team in any ballpark, and made it have all the players, even the guys riding the pine. So with Sega's new World Series Baseball, everything happens, well, more like it does in real life.
Hey, Ricky!
Oh!
I took diet pills. I lost 34 pounds.
6 months later, the weight came back.
That's when I decided to get off the diet roller coaster and get on a Nordic track.
In fact, Nordic Track is so easy to stick with that after 5 years, 7 out of 10 Nordic Track owners still use their Nordic Track skiers an average of 3 times a week.
It's been more than 2 years. The weight's still off, and I'm still on my Nordic Track. You should give Nordic Track a try.
Call now for a free video and brochure. Take weight off and keep it off. Nordic Track introduces the Weight Loss Satisfaction Guarantee. Research shows that Nordic Track's total body workout burns more calories than exercisers that only work your legs. Discover what numerous customers have found. With regular exercise on Nordic Track, you can take weight off and keep it off. And we're so confident you'll lose weight too, we guarantee it. We'll guarantee that you'll lose at least 10 pounds in 60 days or your money back. Call now for a free video and brochure. Ask about our 60-day Weight Loss Satisfaction Guarantee.
Did you hear about this massive meteor that was hurtling toward Earth? It was going to crash right into us. Then suddenly, strangely, it changed course and became our second moon. No, I'm not nuts. I've been watching FTL News feed here on the Sci-Fi Channel every day. Now, in January, scientists discovered Rilo. The asteroid is hollow. Last month, drilling started to discover what's inside. As for this month, who knows? But I bet some foreign life form will be involved in this scenario. That's all I can tell you to do. Watch FTL News feed every day right here on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Science fiction author Frederik Pohl is a living legend, and we don't use that term lightly. He's received every prestigious science fiction award that's possible to win. His published books, short stories, and poems number in the hundreds. Pohl's bountiful career also includes stints as an influential editor, a literary agent, even some dabbling in politics. Science fiction critics Robert Scholes and Eric Rabkin have called Pohl one of the few men to make a genuine impact on the science fiction field.
I think I've probably made an impact just because I've been around a long time and I've done a lot of different things. I was an editor and a writer and all those things. And I'm pretty sure that I can see traces of things that I've done in the present field. You know, writers I first published or persuaded to write and so on. And I think some of the material I've written has opened some new areas for other people. But then everybody does, to some degree or another. That's what science fiction is. It's a literature of innovation.
As a young lad hooked on science fiction, Pohl was determined to make his way as a writer, despite the fact that science fiction was still lowly regarded by the mainstream literati. He began writing at 12 and sold a poem to Amazing Stories a few years later. As his writing matured, an interest in sociology blended with futuristic views. The result was something that came to be called sociological science fiction.
And sociological science fiction, I suppose, discusses how people will behave under differing circumstances with a much larger world population, or after we've been invaded by Martians, or when the oceans have boiled up over the shore, and whatever else ecologically may happen. And I suppose that that is one of the kinds of science fiction that I do write best or most enjoy, because I like to think of what would happen to our institutions if our environment changed, physical environment, political environment, whatever. And I think that's what science fiction is good at. Handwriting gets worse and worse.
Given the intense nature of the subject matter, reading a Pohl book requires a bit more effort than the average fare. But this author has little pity for those who lack the confidence to read his work.
I do not have any degree. In fact, I'm a high school dropout, and if I can understand it, they can understand it. I don't avoid hard subjects when I write science fiction. And it is true that there are a number of readers who are lazy and do not want to try to think about anything hard, but they can find some other kind of science fiction to read. My kind requires a little more effort.
Though Pohl has done his fair share of speculating on the future, he believes there's 1,000,001 chance of seeing his predictions come to light. But the author's psychic skills may be a bit more polished than even he would care to admit.
First novel that I ever published, The Space Merchants, which was written in collaboration with Cyril Kornbluth, was about the domination of the world by advertising, which has, I assumed that it would dominate 100% of our lives instead of the 90% that it now does. And I think that that has to some extent happened.
Though it's a cruel question to pose to someone as prolific as Pohl, we threw caution to the wind and asked whether any of his stories are nearest and dearest to his heart.
But I think the one that I'm most proud of is a short story called Day Million, which was published in 1960-something, and is in some sense a precursor of cyberpunk and various other things. It's the story I'm willing to have engraved on my tombstone, unless they can engrave Gateway, which is harder because it's about 110,000 words.
The designers of Sega's new World Series baseball set up cameras to capture what it really feels like in a Major League box, then made it so you can pick any Major League team in any ballpark, and made it have all the players, even the guys riding the pine. So with Sega's new World Series baseball, everything happens, well, more like it does in real life.
Hey, Ricky!
Oh! Sega!
Every Neon comes with an advanced single overhead cam 16-valve engine. And its 132 high-tech horses should come in mighty handy when you're trying to coax your car onto a freeway. Say hello to Neon. $89.75 for starters, $12.5 nicely loaded.
Uh-oh, he wants to talk to you. But what about your breath? There, the only mints with that Retsin stuff for fresh, clean breath.
Good book?
Very. He's gonna ask you out, but what are you gonna wear?
What makes the budget gourmet entrees so outrageous?
Things that make you go.
It's a bold splash, a savory saute. It's a taste that's extraordinary for a price that's ordinary. It's budget, it's gourmet, it's both.
You are watching Sci Fi Buzz on the Sci Fi Channel.
The designers of Sega's new World Series baseball set up cameras to capture what it really feels like in a Major League box, then made it so you can pick any Major League team in any ballpark, and made it have all the players, even the guys riding the pine. So with Sega's new World Series baseball, everything happens, well, more like it does in real life.
Hey, Ricky!
Oh! Sega!
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry, since I overdose of gamma radiation.
The Sci-Fi Channel. Welcome to the edge.
Duckman quacks up the critics.
Ooh, I'm shaking.
Duckman is kind of a cross between Maxwell Smart and Ralph Cramden.
Get a large wad of broccoli stuck between your teeth.
USA Network has what looks to be a hit on its hands.
So what?
Duckman breaks from the flock. Saturday nights at 10:30 on USA.
My name is Michael Thompson, and I'm calling from Baltimore, Maryland. And I'd like to recommend Lois McMaster Bujold's latest novel, Mirror Dance, in which Mark Peter Vorkosigan comes back to bedevil Lord Miles Vorkosigan. It's another book in her continuing universe, and it is simply phenomenal.
Please do this for me. Call the Buzzboard line at 213-851-7235. Give us your recommendations, about your favorite videos, games, comics, books. Comic books, how about that? Anything you want. And who knows, maybe we'll put your voice on the air. That'd be fun. Now, next week on Sci-Fi Buzz, we're going to give you the top 5 science fiction films, in our opinion, of all time. Plus, top model sculptor Randy Bowen will come by, and a visit from Marta Kristen. Oh, man. And a commentary from Harlan Ellison. Great show for you. See you next time for Sci-Fi Buzz.
The body may be dead, but the terror is still alive. Donald Sutherland is stealing souls in the Life Force experiment. A Sci-Fi Channel Pictures planetary premiere, Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific.
watching the Sci Fi Channel.